On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with an abuse survivor named Jimmy. And Jimmy was in a relationship with a raging abuser. It's a story of sexuality, gaslighting, financial control, sexual coercion, low blows, and post separation abuse. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. I am Brandon Chadwick, and with me today we have Jimmy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. And if you want to be a guest like Jimmy is today, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com and click on the guest form button at the top of the page. There you can read all of our instructions, and please read them all and either send us an email at narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com or fill out our guest form and press the submit button. And please do send it in the format that we ask for. And we do have a content warning for this episode as we do discuss physical abuse, sexual coercion, sexual abuse in this story. So that is a content warning for today. And today you're going to hear Jimmy's story. And Jimmy was in a same-sex relationship with a raging abuser who became physical. And his abuser was always promising to change, but he never did. And I know Jimmy will validate many of you out there. So thank you for being here today, Jimmy. And I'm going to get out of my way and your way. Jimmy, the floor is now yours.
I'm originally from the Caribbean and I identify as a gay man. I've carried that part of me quietly for socio-political reasons. As a child, I wasn't the stereotypical macho boy. I was quiet, reserved, and often teased for not fitting into that mold. I learned early on to shrink myself, to be subservient, to avoid conflict by keeping the peace. And I realized that that experience made me empathetic and observant, but it also primed me to accept things that I shouldn't have in my relationships. Growing up, I knew who my father was, but we never really had a real relationship. I think that absence shaped me more than I realized at the time. By the time I became an adult, I was someone who deeply wanted love, to be in relationship, who believed in second chances, and who thought relationships required sacrifice, even if that sacrifice came at my own expense. I wanted to be seen and valued for who I really was, and that longing made me vulnerable to someone who promised me the world, but who would eventually strip away my sense of safety and self.
So, in your childhood here, growing up in the Caribbean, was being gay, would you say, more difficult in the Caribbean as far as prejudices go in comparison to America, the United States of America, or Canada at that time?
Yes, it was. It was like having an unspoken disease. Like you dare not speak about it. Like I knew from an early age that I liked the same sex. Grew up in church, what's not. I tried doing things to mask that, to not give in to it, but I knew within myself this was who I was. But there wasn't an outlet, there wasn't a safety avenue for me to express myself that way. So I dared not speak up on it.
Did you have any friends that knew, yeah, just had that inkling that you were, and kind of, didn't say anything to you, but were still kind of by your side?
It's interesting. I think my mom always knew. I think my grandmother always knew. I think people always knew, but for the most part, I was just teased in school or in the community because, like I shared, I wasn't like the macho boy. So I remember there were times I was called a CC or such. Um, but over the years, I would have done certain things to not be, not let that be the focal point. So I didn't let that become so pronounced that that would be my identity.
So within your identity at a young age, trying to not have that be your identity, what did you kind of move into to create an identity that you liked? And what were, I guess, the things that you were focusing on that were positive in that time to kind of combat against these other feelings you're having about, wanting love or wanting to be part of, um, getting companionship, loves, or like stability in that sense.
I became very active in community organizations, including church. So that became like an avenue for me to not really hide as a person, but to let that be the focus now that I was doing something positive, I was being creative. Uh, it meant giving people something more than my suspected sexuality to focus on. So I did things in the community, so I wasn't just, okay, the gay boy anymore. I was the boy who is helping young people like himself, who's a young leader, so to speak.
So if people saw you, they'd be like, "Hey, there's Jimmy. Jimmy raised a lot of money for the church this week. Like Jimmy's a good kid."
Yes. So that became my go-to, so to speak, for not having that negative attention on me, or that pressure, because it was pressure growing up, knowing within yourself that you're gay, but you don't want to be constantly ostracized. You don't want to be constantly verbally accosted in the streets. You just want to live your life in peace. There's so much more to a person than their sexuality. And that was my thing. Like I didn't even know about sex then per se. I just knew, okay, I liked the same sex. I was soft, so to speak. So that's why people suspected. I didn't have girlfriends. I had a lot of friends who were girls, but I didn't have girlfriends, so to speak. So people would put one and one together, and that would become their focus. That would become, yes.
And how did you view relationships or marriage? And when it comes to like divorce or things like that, um, and how did you view the world? And what did you want from the world? Like, did you know that you wanted to leave the Caribbean and come to the United States or go to another country? Like, what did you kind of see yourself doing? And like, white picket fence, house, dog, 2.5 kids.
I I viewed myself in the future as someone just being able to be themselves, to be able to walk down the street without the hassle, without any of that. But I realize now that nowhere where you go in this world, there are always going to be problems that you have to face. Um, Over the years, though, like growing up as a child into adolescence, I knew that if I wanted that life to be myself as a gay person, that I eventually would have to leave the Caribbean. I didn't know where I would end up or where I would settle, but I just knew that I had to get out because it was just toxic, constantly dealing with people jeering you in public about your sexuality. So my thing was just to be at peace with myself, but be able to live my life freely, not to wear my sexuality on my sleeve, but to have no hang-ups or worries of my sexuality. So that's it in a nutshell. Like, I knew I had to leave. I didn't know when, or how, or where I would end up, but I just knew that I had to leave at some point.
So when you eventually meet the person that this story is about, where are you in your life? You know, what's going on at that moment before you meet this person?
Before I met my estranged husband, I was out of relationships for 4 years prior. So I had been taking the time to really regroup, do the inner work, and to really heal myself from past pain, etc. I was in a good place, if I would be honest. And I met him through a mutual friend of ours. He had visited the islands where I'm from, and we just hit it off. We clicked. Yeah, at first he was charming, attentive. He was a good listener, and it just felt magnetic. He was the kind of person who made me feel seen in ways I hadn't before. He mirrored my values. He shared his struggles, and he painted a picture of a future we could build together.
Can you tell me about um, his family, you know, where he came from and like what his role was like in his family and, you know, a good 3D picture of like who he really is and like the type of character he is. Is he like this demanding kind of person? Does he always have to be right? And like, where was that formed for him?
Okay, so he basically grew up with his mom. Their father would have left when he was a little boy. And from what I've been privy to, he stayed with his mom because then his mom was in an abusive relationship with his stepfather. So he felt like he had to stay and protect his mom. His younger brother would have left and gone to live with their grandmother. So he felt, I guess, from an early age that he had to be in charge. He had to protect. He would have left when he was about 18, 19 to join the military because at that point, I guess he was fed up of dealing with all the drama in his family and he wanted to live his life. So he left and he was stationed in Germany. And that's where he had his first gay relationship. But it wasn't just having a gay relationship. He was involved with having multiple sexual partners, etc. And he came back home to the US and would have told his mom and family, hey, I'm gay and I'm going to stay in Germany. His mom, over the years, would have developed dementia. So again, he felt like he had to be close to his mom because I know he loves his mom. Uh, he had to be close to his mom to take care of her. So again, he asserted that position where he had to be in control of everything, her meds, her doctor visits, etc., her finances. He had to be in charge. So even when in the early days when they were speaking about the possibilities of what was happening with their mom, he felt that he knew exactly what was going on with her. He calls his mom every day just to check on her. He organizes her groceries, takes care of her bills. So they have a pretty close relationship. However, there were moments where he would again be filled with so much rage that she, although she has dementia, would ask him to leave. And there was an occasion where I was with him and I was trying to get him to calm down because I saw that his irritation was frustrating her. And I was trying to let him know, okay, she is in a vulnerable state. She's, volatile. Um, be a bit more patient and calm when you speak to her. But he wouldn't hear me. And I would try to show him how he goes from 0 to 100 really quick, not just with his mom, but with me. And we were supposed to be two people who he said that he loved dearly, but his anger got the best of him. I don't know where the anger came from because it was really difficult trying to place the source of the anger because, like I said, it would just go from zero to 100 really quickly. Like we would be speaking about something and it would just be like something snaps in him and he would go off. His brother shared that he would beat him without any real reason. Like they'll be out in the yard playing and his brother would just start beating him. Like he would start beating his brother. And his brother said that he couldn't understand what was going on. So he would go and complain to their mom, and their mom would just brush it off and say, I told you boys to stop playing rough. And that'll be it. So I don't know where the anger is from. So I'm not sure where it stems from. Maybe it started in childhood, and maybe that's where he needs to go and process some of that anger from his childhood because I couldn't understand it.
So once you're, established that you guys are in this relationship, there are some red flags possibly early on. You know, where's like the first spot where you can say that this is abuse and or this is not right what's going on, as things kind of go forward where like um it's hard for you to kind of decipher what has happened, but you can now pinpoint and say like abuse has happened.
Okay, in the early days of us dating, I remember that he had introduced me to a relative friend of his, and I also had a relative friend in another state. So I had this brilliant idea to introduce both of them together over a Zoom call. And I asked them both if they were interested, which they were, and we set up the date and time. And the morning of, I stayed in to make breakfast and organize for the Zoom call. And my friend called me and said, hey, I'm actually with a client right now, and it's going to take more time than I expected. Would it be okay to either postpone or ask the other person if they would be okay with doing it 30 minutes later than was scheduled. And I contacted the other person, his friend, and he agreed because he was like, I understand what it is, how it is to work in this industry. Things do happen. So let's do half an hour later. He comes back from a walk and he's like, why aren't you getting ready for the Zoom call? So I proceeded to tell him, okay, this has changed. And he goes off on me. And there was talk of not being professional and wasting people's time. And I'm responding to him, letting him know that his friend and my friend, they're both on the same page. Everyone has already agreed to the new time. So there's not really any need for him to be upset or anything. And then it became an attack on me as a person. It was I was such a bad person all of a sudden, and I brushed it off. I brushed it off, but when I look back and I replay that scenario in my head, it wasn't okay. And I guess that was one of the first instances that I should have paid closer attention to. Um, but I understood that in relationships, people do argue, people do disagree. So I just wrote it off as that. Um, Things got even toxic more than that because he would pick fights weekly, and it kind of set me on eggshells where it would I would I would I would be able to project, okay, if we are good for X amount of days, then in the next 2 days or so, expect an argument. So it was like these arguments or fights were happening like clockwork to the point where he would be shouting at me and I began having panic attacks and he didn't even seem to care because I'd be shaking like a leaf right in front of him and he would just continue verbally accosting me like it was normal. And I just couldn't understand how someone could see someone being affected like that physically and still show no remorse or no concern whatsoever. And it, the argument didn't just stop there. It actually continued for days on end. And I vividly remember him looking down through the elaborate glass panel from the condo onto a demolished work site one day after we had just had a nasty argument. And he had this grimace on his, like an evil grin on his face. And he said, I wonder if you could do the same thing with a human body. And I was totally shocked. And I asked, just for clarity, I asked, what are you talking about? Because I didn't want to think that he was talking about what I thought. And he said that the machine that was crushing the blocks of concrete foundation, it was it was spewing out smaller pieces of stones on the other side. And he still had this smile on his face. And I said, why are you smiling? Why is that even funny? And he just shrugged it off. We later that day went to his mom, and while we were going out of the building, he saw one of the maintenance guys, and he said, I need to make sure treat this person good for Christmas because it was around December. I need to treat this person good for Christmas in case I need to get rid of a body. Now, my mind is just spiraling, and I'm like, what is happening? Am I hearing correctly? I didn't sleep a wink that night, and I immediately called my best friend who lived in another state to ask if I could come stay with him. And I left the next day. We were supposed to be going on a cruise to Australia, New Zealand, a couple weeks after. However, my electronic visa wasn't approved. So I basically counted that as a blessing in disguise because I wasn't able to go. The time away, we would have tried talking about some of these things, and he basically tried to make it seem as I was just making a joke. I don't know why you're getting worked up over this. I didn't mean anything about it. I would never hurt you. But I was trying to let him know, okay, with everything that had been happening, I wasn't feeling emotionally safe. And you don't say something like that to someone that you've just had a nasty argument with. It puts them in a mental frame that, okay, should I stay? Should I go? And that's where I was.
And how did he get you back after that?
So I went back home to the islands and I stayed, it was about 10 months apart. We would have tried to speak here and there, and I would have blocked him and unblocked him several times, but it was as if he was hovering me. There were apologies and promises of change. Like this time, it would be different. I'm going to be better. I'm going to do better. I would never hurt you. And because I had that strong bond to him, I still loved him. So I decided, okay, maybe we should give this another shot. And I came back.
So you came back, and we've talked about he tried to pass that off of as a joke. Is he trying to, pass other things off as jokes? And what are the other types of behaviors that are occurring during this time, whether it be controlling, dismissive, gaslighting, invalidation, things along those lines? And do you have stories and examples for those things?
Yes. So we got back together and he proposed that we get married like immediately. And one of the things was that he wanted me to basically, which I did. I added him to my one of my bank accounts. So I made one of my checking accounts into our joint accounts, and it was him. He would just get really hostile or full of rage quickly. So I basically work remotely, and I have one of my clients that would pay me, and the funds would then end up in that checking account. But I had forgotten to change the process so that it goes into a different account that he doesn't have access to. However, it went to that account, and the funds came in as two paid amounts because I did various services for this person. And he wanted to know, okay, what are these two amounts for? And I began to tell him, okay, this client, I did X and X for them this month, and they paid me. That's how they pay me. Like if I sent two invoices, it would come in two separate amounts. And he was like, I don't understand. So I'm now confused because I'm like, okay, I'm trying to explain this as best as I could, but you're still being difficult over nothing. And that became a big argument. But one of the questions that I asked him was, is it is it the funds being or showing up as two different payments, or is it that I'm getting paid? Because one of the things that he would have said repeatedly to me is that he didn't want me to be worried about taking on new clients or working too hard. So when I look back at some of the things that played out, it seemed like he wanted me to be codependent on him. Like he wanted to be in control. He wanted to have full control of finances and what's not. And if I tried to assert my level of independence or such, he would act up or start a fight, and I just couldn't understand why. There would be these ongoing cycles of rage and then apology and temporary affection. And one of the things that developed over time was he started to hit below the belt with his words. Um, like, I don't know if I should, but he would say things like really nasty, vile things to me that he knew would affect me, psychologically and emotionally. And I'm like, are you listening to yourself? Why are you shouting at me in this moment? I would try to rein things in before it escalated, but he didn't care. He would just stoop to name calling, and I couldn't understand, how could you go from loving someone or say that you love someone and demean and devalue them like he did?
So when he would do these attacks, would he attack your identity of who you are? And would he, you know, attack your insecurities that you knew you had?
Yes, he would.
And when he attacked those things, where did your mind go internally? Did you turn to he's right, or did you start getting like internalized shame? Is he trying to make you feel just bad about yourself? And is it working?
It was working. It was working for a while. It was working for a while. And I began to become more reclusive, more silent, or indifferent towards him. And he would ask, why are you silent? Or why aren't you saying anything? And I'm trying to make sense of everything, but also I couldn't understand how someone would act or say when confronted that they didn't say anything or they didn't say that or act oblivious. So I was left in a state of, did I imagine this? Because he also said that I was making things up. So I began to think, okay, did I make this up? Like, is it a figment of my imagination? So I started to record our arguments, and I would play certain things back to him, and he would either downplay it or just brush it off and then blame me for him acting bat crazy or lashing out at me. And it just made me feel alone because I was in a foreign city. I didn't have my own friend group. I didn't have anyone to really reason with or talk to per se. Uh, most most of the persons I've met were either his friends or family. So I didn't know who to reach out to or if to reach out to them, because one of the things that he said early in the early days was that no matter what's going on between us, we keep everyone out of our business. So it just felt like he was isolating me from reaching out to anyone or saying, okay, don't tell our business to anybody. But on the surface, even after he would have just devalued me or insulted me, his mom would call, or his brother would call, or a best close friend would call, and they would ask where I was. And he would talk to them like, hey, he's right here. We're good. We're good. And it just created a facade. It just created a surface situation where everyone thought that everything was just good between us. But behind closed doors, it wasn't. And I was left to process all of that alone. So, yes, there were times when I did question my memory. I did question, is what's happening, is it really happening, or am I actually making it up?
So, what other manipulation tactics were being used at this time, and do you have stories for those?
Okay. He used sexual coercion in that he wanted to invite people who he used to have sexual encounters with in the past into a bedroom. And I, at first, I was like, no, like flat out, no, no, just no. And he would say things like, I'm not open minded or I'm not experienced enough. And he would say, okay, because I'm from the Caribbean, I'm not so advanced in my thinking as he is, and he's traveled around the world and he's lived in Germany, etc., and and such. But it was confusing too, because when we met initially, he would have shared that he was in some past relationships that included third parties, and he was left to feel empty and insecure and unloved and unwanted. And I couldn't understand, okay, how could you say that then, but now you want to involve other people into our relationships? Do you want me to feel that way? Because one, I wasn't raised like that. Yes, I am gay and I'm from the Caribbean, so most people would be, you know, if they're from the Caribbean, they would be like, I shouldn't be gay and I'm from the Caribbean, but I am. But there are certain things where I hold a person, myself, to a certain standard to, and that was one of the things. And he would repeatedly bring up, these things. There was one person in particular where he would ask, okay, they want to know if we're available. And I'm like, available for what? And over time, like I said, he was constantly pressuring me and stuff. And I initially gave in, and I didn't enjoy it. And I told him that. But even after that fact, he always wanted to do that, do repeat it. And he would say things like, I want you to enjoy what I enjoy. And I'm trying to explain to him that's not how life or relationships should work. Like this isn't okay. This isn't me saying I love painting, so I want you to also come and try and enjoy painting with me. Or I like hiking, so I want you to come and hike with me. This is you're asking me to basically do something I have expressed I'm uncomfortable with and I don't want to participate in. So that created a tension in our relationship. Although he would have said in the moment when I would say, okay, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing it again, I don't want to participate, I'm not comfortable, he would say, okay, my focus right now is on you and our relationship. Those people don't matter. But then he would constantly bring it up. So it was like a loop of him constantly, I guess, probably testing to see if I would eventually give in again. But it was one of the things that he used and would, in the end, also throw back in my face. So, um, I pushed that we speak to a therapist, and we had one session together as a couple with a therapist. And one of the things that the therapist noted to him, basically based on how he was speaking to me, was to tell him that he needed to speak to me like a partner and not as a child. The therapist noted that, yes, there's obvious age difference because he's 18 years older than I am, but just wanted him to remember when speaking to me that he needed to speak to me as his partner and not, don't speak at me, but speak to me. So that was something that he acknowledged. That was something that he acknowledged, but he went back to it and it got worse. It's like it didn't resonate. It, it it didn't mean anything to him because he was who he was, and he didn't feel or think that there was anything about him that needed to be changed. It backfired because after the session, he would have said to me that myself and the therapist made some good points. Then he went silent, and in a split second, he was saying, I don't want to speak to him again. And I couldn't understand the duality of acknowledging that someone made a good point because I thought we were okay, at least we're making an effort to do this together and seek help and heal together and build a relationship. But it didn't seem that way. It felt like the moment this therapist held up a mirror to him, he went in defense mode. So we never managed to speak to anyone again, although he kept saying, okay, we need to find someone else. We need to find someone else. But he wouldn't do the work to find anyone else. You know, it would be left on me to find someone, and he would always find some issue with whomever I found. So it kept me in a loop of being hopeful, but also with nothing being done.
So you're being ping ponged, through all of these emotions and feelings, and you know, it's keeping you on a leash. So you're on this leash, and you told me that financial control also started to become a thing. So can you talk about the financial control?
Okay, so it was more of him wanting to pay everything, or be in control of when what money went where. So for instance, there was an issue with our phone line, because I would have switched my old phone and gotten a new one, and the month like, I was added to his phone line with this network, and I would contribute or pay whatever my amount was. I would send that amount to him so that he would pay, but he told me that it wasn't that much, and because it was myself and his mom on his phone line, it wasn't that expensive, so he'll take care of it. But it was an issue at the end because when I left, I don't want to jump, but when I left, I took my phone number off of his line because I didn't feel like it should be his responsibility to pay it. But that became an issue, and I couldn't understand, why is it that you still want to control the narrative or the situation? We separated for a reason, so I don't want to give him ammunition to use against me, to say, okay, I'm using him because he has called me a gold digger and said that I was using him. So I'm like, okay, this is my responsibility, so I'll take care of my responsibility. Um, he had like bad spending habits. Like, there were occasions where he would see something advertised with Amazon, or it would pop up online, and he would want to buy it. And one, he was complaining about things being really tight, but he wanted to spend without thinking. And he would say to me that I needed to help him curb his spending habits. But it just felt like I was taking care of an older child, an adult child. Like, why do I need to monitor an adult, somebody who's obviously older than I am, their spending habits? And because of his complaints, I would suggest not eating out as regularly as he would want to, or not traveling to other states as often as he would want to, because I am trying to be realistic with the situation. If things are financially tight, then there are certain things that aren't urgent or that important to do right now. You could put them on the back burner. But he still wanted to live lavish, I guess. And that created friction between us, because I'm trying to be the sensible and realistic one, but he wants to be very spontaneous, and he would get rather erratic when I called him out on certain things. So I don't know. It was just a constant cycle of being the good guy, bad guy with him, and it was always my fault. However I tried to speak to him, it would be my fault. He would focus on my reaction to his actions rather than looking at, okay, I shouldn't have approached you that way. And I've tried to explain to him as simple as I could. Like in physics, we know that there's an equal or same reaction to an action, but that just didn't resonate with him. I was the one to blame for his financial woes, because on financial note, he would have also invested in crypto. There was this platform that you could invest or buy like certificates, and he would have invested initially before meeting me over 40,000 US dollars in this. And I'm the kind of person that would like to research certain things. And then in researching, I spoke to one of my friends who's very versed in crypto, and he would have informed me that this platform has been renamed like 4 times, like under different names, and not to get involved in it, or be very careful how I proceeded. And I would have told him this, and he would have basically emptied out his rot in investments and invested in total about $120,000 in this platform. And now he's unable to access or receive any kind of returns on that investment. And it's going 2 years now. So he blames me for that, although I would have shared the information that I came up with in researching, to be very cautious. But I'm the one who's being blamed for that. So it's like I can't win. I can't have a say. And at this point, I was just feeling hopeless because how do you have a healthy relationship with someone you can't even reason with without it becoming an argument or a case of being blamed for something that you had no part in? Therapy didn't help. He began to be very sketchy, and one thing led to another. I noticed that because earlier I would have noted that there was suspicions of drug abuse, and that's because he would have shared with me that in the past that he used to do drugs, hard drugs, but had told me that he's went through therapy and rehab and all that. So I thought I was dealing with a healed person, someone who's done inner work and was trying to be a better version of themselves. But what I realized was there were several occasions where his mouth would twitch, and I would just be twitching involuntarily, and I would ask him, "Hey, what's going on? What's the matter?" Like, and I would ask direct questions. Did you do any drugs? And he would basically say no, but we had we had password to each other's phones, and when I went in his phones, I not only found that he was lying to me about the drug abuse, but I also found that he was also entertaining past sexual encounters. So it was just a lot to unravel and deal with and getting nowhere because confrontation meant arguments, and arguments meant not addressing anything. So there was no accountability or anything.
And you're being treated in this way. Is he talking to other people about you and maybe trying to not maybe ruin your reputation, but to get people on his side and you not knowing about it at all, or maybe knowing about it?
So there were certain messages where I saw what one of his friends, who he told me was just a friend, asking him if he was behaving himself. And he basically responded saying yes, and he wished he wasn't. There were guys sending him jack off videos, etc., or saying that they missed him, being intimate with him, etc. And he would entertain these conversations. So it was the nature of, like, I didn't exist to some of these people. They didn't know that he was married. They didn't know he was in a relationship. He was just carrying on as if I didn't exist. like maybe I was a side piece. So they didn't think, okay, he's in a relationship, so I'm not going to cross that boundary. And even when they crossed that boundary, he didn't stop them or tell them, hey, I'm in a relationship now or such. So that was the nature of most of these messages. Like, it just felt like he was looking for extra sex or attention from people who he's had intimate encounters with in the past. After that whole confrontation with asking him about the messages in his phone, etc., he basically said to my face, like, he didn't have anything to apologize for, or he did nothing wrong, even though I showed him what I saw. And there was no remorse, there was no accountability, nothing. He got so mad that he told me repeatedly to leave, to keep going and don't come back, to the point where he even pushed me out of the bedroom. And in that moment, I am like, I don't feel safe, because if you're going to push me in your rage and then pretend or say that you didn't push me, I don't know what else you could do to me. So in that moment, I started making a concerted effort to get out. On the day that I met, I got a call from his best friend, basically asking if he could meet me on his lunch break. And he didn't work too far from where we lived. So we met up, and I had by then had shared with him some of the experiences I was encountering with my estranged husband, and he basically shared with me some of his personal experiences, and he said that he thought that he had changed, but it seemed that he would never change, because he has to always be the victim, although he would create situations. And that if I loved myself, then he would advise me, although he didn't want to get involved, he would advise me strongly to leave. So in that moment, I'm feeling like conflicted, because I still do love this person. I just wanted them to get their self together. Um, but in that moment, I had to really take a long look at myself and what I had experienced, and question to myself, like, is this what I want for the rest of my life? Because nothing seems to be changing. I'm always going to be blamed for things. I'm always going to be gaslit. I'm always going to be devalued. And is that the life I want to live? I went back to the condo, and he was on a call with uh, a guy, and I hear him saying that he recently got married, and that marriage isn't what it's cut out to be, and his partner is younger than him. That's me. And there's that factor. And I couldn't help myself. I couldn't hold it in anymore. So I am there in the other room, and I am asking him while he's on the phone, why don't you just tell the whole story? Why don't you tell the full truth? Because one of the things that, although he was the one who was older than I was, he had a habit whenever I would try to speak. He had a habit where he would plug his ears with his fingers, and he would say la 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 la, basically blocking me out and dismissing anything I had to say. I remember, like a month or so before, I was feeling homesick, and so I didn't want to stay in the bed and be on TikTok and the light or sound affecting him. So I had gone out on the couch, and eventually I fell asleep on the couch. And he woke up the following morning, and the first words I hear is, "Here we go again." He came out, didn't say anything to me. He got ready for work and he left. There wasn't any good morning. There was a kiss goodbye that was usual when we were on good terms. Nothing. He came back the evening and he came home late, took a shower, and he comes into the bedroom where I was at that time, at that point, and he picks up his pillows and says that he's going to beat me to it so that I won't have to leave the bedroom. So I ask him, "Are you not going to ask me why I slept outside?" And he said that he didn't care, he didn't want to hear. When I proceeded to speak, he did that thing with his plugging his ears and saying la 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 to block me out. And I was once again shocked, and I'm asking him, "Are you seriously reacting like this? I'm sharing a vulnerable situation with you where I miss my family and friends back home. I don't really have anyone here besides you." And he just repeated that he didn't care. And what was astonishing was he would then turn around and say to me that I needed to grow up. So there were occasions like that, many of them where he would do things and then turn around and flip the act on me. And I, I was just left in awe and shock because how could you be acting childish, but I need to grow up? I couldn't understand it. I just couldn't understand it. So being repeatedly told to leave, to keep going and don't come back. And on top of that, there were times when he would slam the doors, and he had said to me on occasion, "If I can't sleep, you can't sleep." So there was that passive aggressiveness going on, like he was making me feel unwelcomed. So it didn't feel like our home anymore. It felt like I was in his space. So I did what he asked me to do. I left. And it was one of the most painful things for me to do because I realized I felt shame too because I felt like I failed myself. Like, why did I allow myself to give someone a second chance to hurt me this badly? Am I such a terrible person? Am I not worthy of love? Am I not worthy of respect? What did I deserve to be treated this way? Because I, I treated this man like with so much love. Um, I would make breakfast for him. I would cook regularly. I would keep the condo clean. I'd do laundry. I would swift the floor, etc. He didn't have to lift a finger, and he would tell me how much he appreciated those things. But then when he got mad, he would insult my cooking. He would say that I'm a waste of space. So I was left feeling worthless because of what he was repeatedly saying to me. So I had to leave for my own peace of mind. I had to get out. It was hard, but I had to. And I remember leaving the building, and there was this doctor, because he's dressed in scrubs, and I've seen him in the elevator before, but we've never said anything to each other. And I don't know, maybe I was wearing worry on my face or what, but he stopped me on my way out of the elevator because he was getting on, and he asked if I was okay, and I said yes. But he was like, no, it's not, you're not okay. So we spoke for a bit. I didn't go into details as such, but in that moment, he offered me some sound word of advice. Like it just felt like the universe or God was sending people to speak to me. And I was like, okay, so I was there in the lobby trying to order a Lyft or an Uber to get to the airport. And he's like, what are you doing? So I told him, and he's like, no, I'll get it. So he insisted, although I would have declined initially, he insisted on ordering me an Uber. And just when I got into the Uber, a friend of mine back home who I hadn't spoken to in months, like I have friends like that. Like we don't need to speak with each other regularly or on a daily basis. But then when we do speak, we catch up and everything is good. We don't hold malice towards each other or anything. So I hadn't spoken to her in months. And just as I got into the Uber, she sends me a message basically saying, whatever you're going through, know that you're loved and you're worthy of so much more. And I couldn't help but tear up in in the back seat because I was like, where is this coming from? You know, I'm in a dark place right now, and here's this guy I hadn't spoken to, and now my friend who we hadn't spoken to in months just coming out of nowhere to offer me encouragement and hope in a dark situation. And I think in that moment, I just knew that whatever is happening now, I'm going to be okay.
So the relationship ends, and then post separation abuse begins. So, what happens in the sense of when things do end, his reaction, and then what unfolds after?
So the day after I left, he lit up my message inbox with messages, and they were nasty. Like it just felt like I hadn't left. It felt like I was still there in the situation in his condo with him, allowing him to speak to me and calling me out of my name and stuff. And I decided for my peace of mind to block him. What transpired after was he used his one of his friends and his brother to reach out to me. And his brother then, because I've met his brother several couple times, and his brother would have told me that both himself and his wife wanted to reach out to me because he had shared with his wife his experience with growing up with his brother, who was my estranged husband. Um, so they wanted to know how I was doing, but they didn't know if to reach out. So it just felt like I was going through things alone and I didn't know who was safe to reach out to. And they didn't know if it was okay to reach out to me either. But what transpired was he went to his mom's house and he broke down crying. His mom didn't know what was going on. And his mom then called his brother, who then called him and found out. He told his brother that we had a big falling out and I left. And I couldn't understand how you could deduce that whole situation to I left. He told me repeatedly to leave, keep going and don't come back. He made it very unwelcoming for me to stay. So I told his brother everything that happened. And then his brother would have told me some things about growing up with him, how his brother, who's older, used to basically beat him for nothing and then get no satisfaction from their mom. The mom would be like, I told you guys stop playing. And um his brother has a higher level of education than he does. So his brother noted that he felt like my estranged husband felt jealous towards him because of his tertiary education. Like they both have tertiary educations, but his brother has a level higher than he does. And his brother would allow him to basically man conversations and not really have any input just to avert not having an argument with him. That's the nature of how they communicate now, that his brother wouldn't even voice certain things, although he has things to share. He would just let him speak. So there was that finally aha moment like, okay, I wasn't crazy because I've also experienced with him whenever he would lecture me about things. And whenever I started to speak, he would either do that disrespectful thing of plugging his ears, saying la la la, or telling me he didn't want to hear, or I've said, I've repeated that in the past without even allowing me to finish my statement. So he wouldn't hear me out, but say, oh, you repeated that without even hearing me out. So I finally saw, okay, this has to be a trait. This has to be a norm for him. This is who he is. I wasn't making things up. Um, there was constant back and forth where because I still felt trauma bonded, I would unblock him, and there would be this glimpse. There would be this glimpse of hope where um he would start sentences so promising, like if he has come to his realization, but then the end of the sentence or end of that paragraph would end up with him blaming me. And I would be like, this is just a cycle that goes nowhere. It achieves nothing. Why am I even entertaining this? Why am I entertaining this? He then placed the onus on me to fix things, to fix what was broken. He told me that I needed to give him the roadmap back to us, back to me, that I needed to help him understand things. And whenever I would try to not rehash, but to explain things to him, he would then become oblivious again. Oh, I don't remember doing that, or I didn't say that. You said, I'm like, no, that's what you said. So there was just no accountability with him at all. He had to be in control always, whether in conversation, whether with finances. He had to control everything, and he just wanted someone, it seemed, to be subservient. But that was who I was as a child. I've grown. I'm no longer like that. So I'm not going to stay silent and allow someone to insult and devalue me and say nothing. I'm going to give you an opportunity to acknowledge what you're doing, try to rein it back, or if you persist, then I'm going to give you what you're dishing out. So we constantly butt heads because he felt like he was always in the right to verbally abuse me, to degrade me, and I shouldn't say anything. I shouldn't fight back. I shouldn't answer him. And that was what was confusing, because even when I stayed silent, he got upset because he wasn't getting a rise out of me. So it's like, what do I do? Damned if I do, damned if I don't. Do I respond? Should I respond? How do I respond? Since we've parted, I've been doing therapy. I've been really trying to take care of my mental health. I've been journaling, trying to reclaim my identity or my peace of mind, trying to be more creative. Because one of the things that I realized was, with the constant cycle of abuse and manipulation with him, it affected my creativity, it affected my work. So I was unproductive. I was just in a state of trying to process what I was experiencing with him. So it just left me still not doing anything, and not to take the focus back to him. But one of the things that he would have said to me after we parted was, if I was even considering how all of this was affecting him. And I couldn't understand that, because I was here to be with him, to build a life with him. And he asked me to leave repeatedly. 1 week after I left, he put up the condo for sale. So it just felt like it was a strategic move on his part to push me away by being this vile and nasty towards me, and do what he needed to do, not keep in loop or consider me. But then he is the victim of all of this, because, and now I've left based on what he's told me. He's the victim. I should have stayed. So I realized that I was focusing and living my life worrying about how me doing or not doing certain things would affect him, but I wasn't getting that same thing from him. I would get anxiety every time I opened my email and I looked and I saw like a spam message from him with his name on it. I would get anxiety because I didn't want to open it, because I didn't know what level of hate or hostility I was going to be reading. But those were measures I had to take to not focus on him, not entertain him, but try to regulate my nervous system, try to forgive him, because for him to have done or be as nasty as he was to me, he must be truly a hurt person. And one of the things I think we spoke about was that hurt people hurt people. And if you don't do the work to heal yourself, then you're constantly going to hurt and bleed on people who are meant to love you or be there for you. You don't end the cycle by repeating the same thing. So I've been using our separation to rediscover myself, my worth, and my power, because I am so much more than the things that he said to me or put me through. And I am reminded by a quotation by Ron Atkinson that says, "Distance is the only answer to disrespect. Don't react, don't argue, don't get involved in drama. Simply remove your presence." And that's what I've done. I've removed my presence and I'm moving on with my life.
And if you had any words of wisdom for everyone listening, what would they be?
Love yourself. Love yourself enough to realize when someone is treating you or talking to you how you do not expect to be treated. When you have a sense of self-worth, you don't entertain or linger in situations that were meant to destroy or damage you. So don't do like I did. Love yourself enough to love people from a distance and walk away from situations not meant to heal or elevate you. Love yourself.
Well, Jimmy, I really want to thank you for being here with us today and sharing your story and all the details of, the abuse and all of your feelings for people to get validated by your experience. And I really just can't thank you enough for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Jimmy, for being our guest today. And if you want to be a guest like Jimmy was today, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com and click on the guest form button at the top of the page. There you can read all of our instructions, and please read them all and either send us an email at narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com or fill out our guest form and press the submit button. And please do send it in the format that we ask for. Also, at our website, we have a support group. So if you need support, we have a support group there by clicking on the support group button at narcissistapocalypse.com. Inside, you'll see that we have Zoom meetings every Wednesday nights, Thursday afternoons, and Saturday nights. We have forum boards for you to post on to get the validation that you need from survivors just like you. It is a wonderful group of people on there, and you can make a lot of friends too. So if you need support, join our support group today. And if you need even more support, please do visit our friends at domesticshelters.org. At domesticshelters.org, they have articles and resources to help you make sense of everything that you're dealing with. And they have every phone number, email address, and web address for shelters and agencies. No matter how big or small the town you're in, domesticshelters.org has it there. So if you need extra support, please do go to domesticshelters.org. And we have friends of the show called Shelter Movers, everyone. And Shelter Movers can be found at sheltermovers.com. And what they do is they help you move all of your stuff from your home into storage. And that can be your pets and livestock, too. So if you're trying to get out of domestic violence and coercive control and you just need help leaving the home, getting all of your stuff out of the home into storage, including your pets and livestock, too, sheltermovers.com can help you. They are only available in Canada, and they are a donor-supported charitable organization. So if you need help from them, or just want to donate to them, go to sheltermovers.com. And that is it for today's episode, for today's survivor story. So for myself and Jimmy, we hope you have a good night.